Bella raga! Buonasera, buonasera. Com'è? Grazie all'astrologa, 18 signori, proprio come 8D che è una moneta periodica del Sistema Solare. Una cometa periodica. Grazie mille, grazie mille. Rinnovate, che qui il counter ieri l'avevamo raggiunto con tanta fatica, gioia e divertimento ed è ricrollato subito. Ma noi siamo meglio di così. Spero almeno, non so. Hi Wood! How are you? Grazie al Pampo per i 31 mesi. Aggiornamento. Aggiornamento. Dinosaur Fossil Hunter è uscito alle 7 di oggi e me l'hanno fatto comprare, quindi me lo sono dovuto acquistare perché la demo non si è trasformata nel gioco completo, quindi mi hanno proprio preso per cortesia, mi dai fastidio se cortesemente. Grazie a Elzis Pascia per i suoi 11 mesi. I'm reading Final Fantasy XIV, but for the last time this week. Enjoy your rest. It's correct? Your vacation? I want a vacation too. Can I have a vacation? Can I come with you? Bud? Pampo, ti ho ringraziato? Grazie per i 31. Se non ti ho ringraziato io ti ringrazio per i 31 mesi. Grazie mille. Cosa c'ho qua? Moscerini? Che cazzo? Cos'è? Bleh. Per il finale su Moon Knight e te lo dirò quando lo vedo. Per ora non me ne sbatti un cazzo. Quindi vedremo. Buonasera. Ormai sono internazionale, io sono una rivista. Per cosa sei offesa? Per cosa sei offesa, Q? Grazie Outbreak. Grazie Outbreak. Buonasera gatto, dopo 6 mesi passati da mia nonna per motivi di ristrutturazione, finalmente sabato sono rientrata a casa e quindi si sboccia. Ah, ma che bello. Come sta la nonna? Adesso mi hai messo curiosità, Che sia la volta buona che ci resto secco Q, eh? Che sia la volta buona. Che cazzo, succede mai? Il dolore però si è abbassato un po', vabbè che ho preso la cosa lì, adesso ho preso un altro, vediamo. Grazie Bruce, buonasera, ho bisogno della vostra vicinanza in questo momento. Chiuso in camera perché positivo e la famiglia negativa. Sono 2 giorni di febbre, tosse, raffreddore e nausea. Le live mi aiutano a distrarmi. Hai una scusa Bruce per non fare un cazzo, goditela. Io lo so che stai male, sono molto dispiaciuto per te, però vedi il lato positivo della situazione. Ti riposi. Che non è scontato, che non è scontato. Pepe, non fare... Hai la scusa, hai proprio il certificato per dire io adesso non faccio niente. Che bello.
Ah, sì, mi ricordo.
Amico Spritz, buonasera gatto, sono arrivato anche io alla doppia cifra. Si va verso l'alba. Scusami. Grazie mille per i 10 mesi. Rinnovate per il treno. Che spissa. Sono in pantaloncini corti perché tutta oggi sono morto dal caldo. E infatti come potete vedere, guardate che sexy che sono. Però adesso ho freddo. Ed è buissima questa stanza, tra l'altro. Buissimo tutto. Sempre bello non fare un cazzo. Mi ricordo quando arrivai ai 12 mesi di sabato che traguardo che mi sembrava. Sì. Che avete fatto di bello quest'oggi? Io ho scritto un video. Finalmente ho scritto il video. Parleremo di decooling. Mi sono ricordato un paio di cose da aggiungere, le aggiungerò probabilmente domani in corso di registrazione. Sì, ve lo spoilerò, tanto spero che vada tutto bene. C'è ovviamente anche NordVPN infilato dentro, quindi ovviamente c'è anche quel passo lì. Quella sarà la parte che monto per prima probabilmente e nulla. Domani registro, vedo di montare già la partita del VPN, così mando tutto perché poi venerdì abbiamo la giornata bella piena. Venerdì abbiamo una giornata bella piena e basta, tanto mando avanti. Minchia Kremlitz. Io sono ancora gonfio, ancora gonfio. Ah, mi spiace Zundere, cosa è successo? Grazie a Madness per i 20 mesi. Il check-in si può fare anche più tardi per venerdì? Sì, cioè, però non oltre venerdì. Te lo dice sempre Q. Sono molto contento. Polline mi ha messo KO. Quindi Culline che è morto morto, se vuoi saperlo, guardati il mio video venerdì. Martedì. Sì, sto prendendo... come si chiama? Avevo quello per il culo. Capito quale, no? La... Brufen. Brufen! Ah. Vicini come al solito che uno in ogni direzione il turno fanno casino. Bello, ma mettono su una band. Ragazzi, l'Ape Train è a livello 2, a livello 0, è allo 0, dai. Un rinnovino. Brava Q, brava. Brufen non è per il mal di testa, è un moment più potente, sì. Però mica se ne deve avere di mal di testa per prendere il Brufen. Stamattina era più gonfio. Adesso è come ieri sera. Però l'ho preso solo stamattina il Brufen. Ieri ho preso solo un moment ieri mattina. Io lo prendo sempre. Ne dubito, Christian, perché quello lì te lo danno solo con la ricetta. Cioè, se lo prendi sempre qualcosa non va bene. Imezuzu, buonasera, si rinnova come ogni mese, grazie per i 26 mesi. Ciao Gabriel, come stai Gabriel? Dimmi come stai Gabriel. Joseph, buonasera. San Gattanza alla ficcanza, grazie mille. Ma vi vedo rinnovanti adesso, eh?
Un tavolo buono che conosco il proprietario. Ma certo.
C'è stata la battaglia tra i pupini qui sotto. Ma che c'è Gabriel? Si vai via adesso. Che è successo? Non l'ho visto il trailer della serie di Obi-Wan. Me lo guarderò dopo. Grazie a Dardassa per i 57 mesi. Dov'è? No, non si è cambiata. E che dobbiamo fare? Sta schifosa. Eccola qua. Toglietevi dal cazzo, eccola qui. Vai via da qua. Il rapporto fra gatto e dottore è problematico. No, è che non c'ho cazzo. Non c'ho cazzo di fare telefonate, dai. Oggi ho dovuto chiamare... Cioè, allora, ieri ho chiamato quelli della spazzatura, che mi ha richiamato oggi per dirmi, guarda che potevi fare tutto online. E ho detto, scusi, dove? Ah, devo chiedere il bidone per il vegetale. Perché c'è più comodo così, anche i miei vicini fanno in questa maniera, allora mi voglio uniformare. Tanto costa una sciocchezza, 26 euro l'anno più 76 centesimi a ogni svuotamento. Grazie a Kyogzer. Ciao gattone, si rinnova sempre volentieri, grazie mille. Oh, così. Vai sul sito, entri nella tua parte personale, selezioni contratti, ok, così, selezioni contratti. Dalla sezione contratti clicchi sul tuo contratto, Alla fine c'è aggiungi e dopo l'aggiunta selezioni il tipo di bidone che vuoi e dopo che l'hai selezionato ti metti il numero di telefono che ti devono richiamare. Vabbè, mi chiameranno. Mi chiameranno. No, non l'ho rubata a Tofu l'idea di sbagiucchiare gli avatar perché io non c'ho il coso, non c'ho. Non ho il punto. Io lo faccio solo con le persone che voglio io. E infatti tipo questa qua, la piglio al volo e via. Grazie a Bugarozzo per la sub. No, ma non era spiegato bene. Forse ho sbagliato. Era meglio se andavo a prendermelo io il bidone. Solo che dovevo chiamare per prendere appuntamento. Non c'avevo cazzo di prendere appuntamento per poi andare a perdere un'altra giornata lì in coda a prendere il bidone. Ho detto, vabbè, portatemelo a casa. Gli ho dato il numero, mi chiameranno. Grazie a Ghost Shark per i 6 mesi.
Ah, sì, mi ricordo.
Vabbè, comunque, stasera giochiamo alla parabola di Stanley. Che per chi non lo sapesse è un gioco bello. Magari finiamo il DLC, magari no, adesso lo scopriamo. Stamattina mi sono proprio cagato il cazzo con Dune, eh. Cioè, una certa mi sono detto, mi sono rotto i coglioni. Erano le 10. Vantaggio di vivere in un condominio, che qual è? Perché se vivi in un condominio qui comunque tutta sta trafila te la devi fare. Aspetta, che ore sono? Sono le 20. Ah, aspetta che è PM. Ok, e 5. Fatto. Preciso, eh? Sì. Bah, non particolarmente, ma va bene. Scusatemi, è che non ho... Non particolarmente, però va bene, mi fido. Ammetto che ti ho dato l'orario esatto. E? Sì. Molto bene. A me piace che gli orari siano giusti. Questo è strano. Ah, ok. Va bene. Quindi mai. L'orologio della mia macchina è 2 ore indietro. Com'è possibile?
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every
ma è
day,
l'intro dell'1.
every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every
Ma infatti il mio orario
minute of his
preferito è
position.
saper l'ora esatta,
So
Gabriel.
he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Was happy.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget.
Mai.
He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived.
Però in caricamento
on the
c'era il
monitor
2,
for him
c'era,
to
quindi
follow.
giusto.
No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting. or
C'erano
even
i
say
palloncini.
hi. Never in all his years at the
Get
company
well someday.
had this happened. This complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Eh sì, i palloncini sono
All of his
aggiunti.
co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Ok.
No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers. Stanley felt the bucket calling to him, begging him to pick it up. Why was he not doing it?
Dov'è il secchio, scusami? Ah, eccolo! Non l'avevo visto.
Stanley picked up the bucket.
Sì, non l'avevo visto, scusatemi. Game changer.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. Yes, perhaps it truly was. How insightful the bucket turned out to be.
Che cazzo c'è scritto qua? Era scritto a mano quello lì.
Truly, being here with the bucket was a grand adventure. Stanley reflected on all they'd been through together. First, walking through the door on the right. Then No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift.
Sì. Sì.
Good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him.
Non
It
vado
should
giù,
have
voglio andare
alarmed
lì.
him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket
C'è un
asked.
collezionabile lì.
In here.
Said the bucket.
Go into this dark room over here.
Stanley once again obeyed blindly.
Non posso fare nient'altro, vero? Ok. Allora,
Now pick up the phone.
Said the bucket.
Pick up the phone and it will take us back home.
E
Where
questo
we
c'era
can
anche
go
nel
about
vecchio.
life together.
non voglio rispondere. Non voglio. Palpatine secchio. Pipipiri, pipipiri. Secchio.
This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a friend. And then, very distressingly, he began to believe the bucket could speak to him.
No. Ti prego, non mi dire che adesso siamo a casa nostra e viviamo con il secchio. Guarda il quadro. Cazzo. I just my bucket sarà scritto.
The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket was merely meant to provide the comforting glow of companionship. It doesn't literally talk and give you orders. Whatever Stanley is hearing the bucket say to him is just in his head.
Ah, Non è strano?
Lately, I've been concerned about him. Wouldn't you be concerned as well? To see him delusional like this, obsessing over an inanimate metal object? I want to say something to him, but I don't know how I can convince him. I don't know if he'll listen to me.
Per tornare... Perché cambia la... Cos'era? PLU.
Anyway, Stanley,
Plu?
can you hear me? Listen to me. It's just a bucket. It can't think, it can't talk. All it will ever truly do for you is effectively transfer a liquid from one location to a different location. That's it. It doesn't do anything else.
Non ascoltare l'uovo che blattera. Premi H per tornare a casa assieme.
You see, he's not listening. He's still taking orders from the bucket. You know, once upon a time it was me he took orders from. Me he trusted and listened to. Now all he cares about is his awful bucket. This stupid hunk of metal.
Grazie a Tricket e 2, ma in realtà sono molti di più. Grazie mille per i tuoi 3 mesi. Rinnovate ragazzi, dai che torniamo alle 3002. Ce la faccio. Stasera ce la si fa. Rinnovate tutti che torniamo alle 3002. K. Per ignorare chiunque nella tua vita tranne me. Mi sembra un po' eccessivo, però va bene.
It's sad. I suppose he doesn't need me anymore. From now on, he's just going to cling to this bucket, this cold, empty bucket, this sort of shiny bucket. Well, I'll give it this. The bucket does have a nice shine to it.
Tu credi che io sia reale, vero Stanley? Sì.
Yes, I suppose on closer inspection that it doesn't quite look like your average hardware
Sì,
store
effettivamente è
bucket.
un brutto secchio,
It's
non
just
è un bel
a little more,
secchio.
what am I trying to say? Sturdier, more capable of transporting liquid. Like it would be better at moving an amount of water from one room to another.
Potrei usarlo magari? T per rivivere lo stesso giorno con me ancora e ancora. Madonna.
Oh my God, what am I saying? Better at carrying water from room to room. It's a bucket. It's literally just a bucket. Why do I feel some need to point out the ways in which it's so much more than just a regular bucket?
Grazie Barn Demon per la sabbia regalata. G per tornare a casa al lavoro, a casa al lavoro, a casa.
Oh no. I'm having feelings for the bucket. Oh, no. What's going on? Why do I want to be with the bucket? Hear what the bucket has to say. Do anything it asks. What's wrong with me? I don't understand. Perhaps if I had the bucket, this would be less confusing. Yes, the bucket could tell me what to do in this troublesome situation.
Devo mettere il VM18? Vedete che c'è una scena... Speriamo di no, cioè è strano. Dai, io mi butto.
Stanley, give me the bucket. Give it to me. Give me the bucket, Stanley. I need it.
No.
Give it to me now. Give it
Chiudi gli
or
occhi.
I'll...
Chiudi gli occhi. Ok. Back to work, Stanley. Facciamo finta di niente?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. Stanley lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest
Va bene.
and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers.
Monetize free to play. aperta.
Oh, Stanley, can you feel it? The broom closet. It wants the bucket. You can feel that, can't you? The aura of jealousy? It's as clear as day. This broom closet believes it deserves the bucket. I can really feel it now. It's a bucket. It belongs in a broom closet. That's what the broom closet is trying to say here. It's supposed to go with the other cleaning supplies. Good for you, Stanley. Don't give in. Don't hand over the bucket. I know how hard it must be.
Vorrei
given the
metterlo giù in
pressure that
realtà.
the broom closet is putting on your shoulders right now, but you have to be strong. This is your bucket. This is your companion and lifelong friend. You can't hand it over. Oh no. We're getting into name-calling now. This is how low the broom closet has sunk that it has to resort to this stream of petty insults simply in order to get you to hand over the bucket. Stanley, I never liked this broom closet for a variety of reasons.
No, certo.
But even this is worse than I had imagined. And wait, now the broom closet has the gall to imply that you and the bucket are not truly deep and lasting friends? That your relationship is purely
Adesso
superficial
caldo,
and
cazzo, aspetta
convenient?
che apro la
That your life is so banal and meaningless that you'd feel the same sort of kinship towards any inanimate object which happened to lay in your path in an even partially enticing manner? Well, I never. Go on, Stanley. Lay into it. Really tell the broom closet off for its demeaning comments. Expand on the wide variety of experiences you and the bucket have shared together. Go through each of them point by point. Share your journal entries detailing the rich emotional landscape of your feelings for the bucket. They have changed and evolved over the years.
Beh,
Let him have it.
beh. Brutta scelta di parole. Posso dropparlo adesso? No.
Okay, I've got you something which I think will help settle
Sì.
this debate once and for all. Here we go. There. Now it's settled. No more debate, no more discussion. Take a hike, broom closet, with all your meandering philosophical diatribes about the nature of cleaning supplies and their relationship to broom closets in the natural order of things.
Mio Dio. Hi, Cos. Roncallica,
All
è come
right,
piccolo...
I've got a second sticker back here, and I'm going to slap it on as well because I think it's appropriate. You see? I feel that it works because the sticker is also a
Non l'ho
bucket.
capito.
That way, if you're ever unsure whether the thing you're holding is a bucket or not, you can look down at this sticker and say to yourself, ah, it's a bucket. There really is a wide variety of applications for this sticker.
Sì. Roncallica, ecco il piccolo contributo al counter. Grazie per la sua compagnia. Grazie mille per i suoi 3 mesi. E grazie anche a...
I could take the name calling and the dismissal of your kinship with the bucket.
A Freya per i
Now,
27
the broom
mesi.
closet is just giving us a silent
Oh, it's a
treatment.
bucket.
And to be honest, I'm sick of the pettiness on display. You can stay here all you like, but I've had it with this impetulant room of cleaning supplies. Easily the most childish such room I've ever been in. I'll see you outside, and we can get on with the story about you and your bucket.
Ha finito. Cazzo. Ah, it's a bucket. Basta. Possiamo andare.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Sì, me lo ricordo. The Beige Pages. È un po' aggressiva. Un po' aggressiva questa scelta di business. Time, giustamente. Indoors monthly.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos.
Che
It would
bello,
be
mi
with
piacerebbe un
him
sacco avere una stanza così,
always.
magari non così
The
alta.
bucket would.
Il resto mi
And
piace.
he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along?
Grazie Loki per i
Was the
15
bucket
mesi.
guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Tu devi essere Igor. No, si
Che
pronuncia-
culo è delle volte indovinare. No, ma infatti l'altezza della stanza non mi ficcava, Q. Aspetta che c'è un collezionabile.
You found one of them. One of the miniature Stanley figurines. Remember, no reward for collecting all of these, only the intrinsic pleasure of a job well done. You can't buy that sort of happiness, Stanley. God knows I've tried. So, I implore you to savor each and every moment you come across one of these beautiful
Infatti mi
figurines.
sento meglio. Sono felice di averla presa. Aspettavo di cadere nel vuoto.
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would
Stanley
be all
al
Stanley
secchio.
could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him,
Chissà
comforting
quante linee
him,
di dialogo in più ne hanno
reassuring
fatto
that in this
rifare,
darkest
uguali
moment
ma
of
col
uncertainty,
secchio.
He would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
Cosa? Sono un po' eccessivo. Tutti vorremmo un
The door
amico
behind
secchio.
them was not shut.
Fa un rumore in metallico
Stanley
mi
and
dà
the bucket still
fastidio.
had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
E invece...
At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Però... Cioè, il fatto che non mi sia fatto niente è incredibile.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end as it was crushed violently to death. It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a
bucket di
glorious
Salai.
bucket to behold.
Ah. Dov'è finito il secchio? Morto. Il secchio. È tradotto questo. Benvenuti alla grande esposizione. Siete sull'orlo di un precipizio della coscienza, proprio come un secchio. Mentre la mente umana è spesso vuota, una caverna spoglia, ma attraverso la mostra che vi attende la mente si riempie, si arricchisce e si nutre. Grazie Revolverone, sono 3 come... non lo so, come passa in fretta il tempo quando ci si diverte. Grazie mille.
Ah, sì, mi ricordo.
La conoscenza del secchio e della storia sono l'unica vera conoscenza che realmente abbiamo. Porterete al mondo ciò che apprenderete qui, accetterete con mente aperta anche quelle informazioni che potrebbero mettervi alla prova, cambierete la vostra vita e quelle dei vostri cari come conseguenze di questa mostra? Leila.
Leila.
Se è già il gioco dovrebbero scontarti 7 euro Super Game. Revolverone, sono 3 come, non lo so, come passa in fretta il tempo quando ci si diverte. Oh, grazie mille. Rinnovate! Come Revolverone. Dai che arriviamo al 3002. Dai. Controllate tutti se dovete rinnovare. Se non dovete non serve, però cliccate abbonati che vediamo. Offerte effetti di niente, continuerete a vivere come prima? Ma nell'ignoranza? Oscurità? Scusate, c'ho un po' di sbadigli stasera. Che cazzo, eh?
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
È opinabile, credo. Bello. Cosa c'è lì? Una sedia. 25. Fotografia di 25 secchi, il numero più grande di secchi mai catturati in un'unica immagine. Il fotografo rimase in shock e catatonico per diverse settimane come conseguenza dell'euforia da esposizione. Ora, non sono matematico, ma per me sono più di 25. Sono chiaramente 16. C'è una sedia però. Vabbè. Ah beh, ovviamente con la doppia maniglia. Un secchio con 2 manici. Questo secchio è raffigurato con 2 manici. Tale modifica non è mai stata portata nella realtà, essendo stata giudicata troppo pericolosa e sconsideratamente sperimentale. Ogni anno decine di persone vengono condannate a morte solo per aver tentato di realizzarla. Anche la scritta al contrario alla Da Vinci, bravi. Il secchio inferno, una riproduzione del secchio inferno, che in epoca medievale fu così prepotentemente attraente che portò decine di nazioni in guerra, l'uno contro l'altra, per ottenerne il controllo. Perirono in miliardi e tuttavia questo semplice fatto rimase inconfutabile. Nessuno può controllare il secchio. Il secchio antistress, presentato senza commento. Ah, ci fai entrare tutte le tue robe, le fai... va bene. Secondo me, guarda. Ah, ok. Secondo me al 100% esiste un museo del secchio. Me lo puoi cercare, Q, per favore? Ma che cos'è? Un drone? Ah no, un buco nel soffitto! Pittura rupestre. Sappiamo che l'esistenza dei secchi precede quella dell'essere umano, ma non sappiamo di quanto. Questo graffito mostra la prima scoperta da parte dell'uomo degli usi pratici del secchio. Quindi la storia del secchio era già iniziata probabilmente a diversi millenni. Si noti come il secchio permette di essere usato dopo aver giudicato l'umanità meritevole dei suoi tesori. Secchi esteri.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
Il secchio appeso, che è quello di prima. Questo pezzo simbolizza la relazione indispensabile tra il secchio e l'umano. Per quanto chiaro sia ciò che sappiamo del secchio, molto rimane ancora al di là della nostra portata. Questa distanza, naturalmente, è per il nostro bene. Quel buco senza fondo, secondo voi? Rinnovate.
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
Lì pensavo di dover chiudere il gioco.
What could it mean?
Però
Stanley
non so se
decided to go to the meeting
avesse
room. Perhaps he had
funzionato.
simply missed a memo. The confusion and the chaos all seemed to melt away as Stanley embraced the bucket. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Ah, sono i collezionabili.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Another miniature Stanley figurine. This, you know, there really must be a snappier name for these things. What about mini-Stans?
Mini a
Stanley
stand, bello.
figures. What about Stanlerines? Yes, I think I like that.
Stanlerines.
Another Stanlerine under your belt.
Bello.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours.
Come
He
se ne
might
va
be
uno
fired
con
for
questa
that.
macchina
And
dal
in such a
cancello?
competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms.
No, non è
Am I
ripartito, c'è gli
crazy?
adesivi.
He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all.
No, è stato zitto,
That's
bravo.
strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd.
Finisce male
Now
qui,
he
eh.
felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him.
Stanley! Stanley, it's me!
The bucket!
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next. None of them were his. None of them were his special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley. Find
Vabbè, c'è gli adesivi su.
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out.
Va bene.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Come?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course, he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought.
Molto.
And she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Ah, basta, la storia di Mariella finisce lì. Immaginavo.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
Lo lascio
Perhaps
lì
he
il
had
secchio
simply
adesso.
missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Wow, yes, this room. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here.
Non so ti dalle elementari cosa, Molluz?
I realize that investing in your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the
Come sei
fact
lì
is
sotto?
that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about.
Ah, dici che senza secchio è
Stop
solo il
trying to
gioco
make every
originale?
decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for... This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life.
I believe.
She's been waiting.
Do you like this game? It's
That's
very
her,
good.
Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
Nessuno sconto, Gabriel? Me l'aveva detto Lino. Magari era scontato se lo preordinavi, sai?
As Stanley picked up the phone, a white light engulfed him, filling him not just with radiance, but with hope. Hope for a life reunited one... Wait. Oh, goodness. Stanley, did you just unplug the phone? No, that wasn't supposed to be a choice. How did you do that? You actually chose incorrectly? I didn't even know that was possible. Let me double-check. No, it's definitely here, clear as day. Stanley picks up the phone. He's taken to his apartment where he finds his wife, and the two pledge themselves to one another. Music comes in, fade to white, roll credits. Not picking up the phone is actually somehow an incorrect course of action. How is that even possible? None of these decisions were supposed to mean anything. I don't understand. How on earth are you making meaningful choices? What did you... Wait a second. Did I just see... No, that's not possible. I can't believe it. How had I not noticed it sooner? You're not Stanley. You're a real person. I can't believe I was so mistaken. This is why you've been able to make correct and incorrect choices. And to think I've been letting you run around in this game for so long. If you'd made any more wrong choices, you might have negated it entirely. It's as though you completely ignored even the most basic safety protocol for real-world decision-making. Or did you not grasp the severity of the situation? Well, I won't have that kind of risk on my watch. I'm going to stop the game for a moment so we can educate you properly on safe decision-making in the real world. Please observe this helpful instructional video.
Prego.
Choice. It's the best part of being a real person. But if used incorrectly, can also be the most dangerous. For example, in this scenario, a hypothetical real person named Rupert has a choice.
Certo.
He could invent a machine that eliminates food shortages across the world to make life better for all people.
Però.
Or he could spend years of hard work forgetting how to read.
Cosa?
Which choice would you make?
Cosa?
Remember that unlike here, the real world makes sense, and at no time should you make a
quelle erano le
choice
opzioni,
that does
però.
not conform to rational logic. If you find yourself speaking with a person who does not make sense, in all likelihood, that person is not real. Allow the person to finish their thought, then provide an excuse why you cannot continue talking. Turn to a partner and practice saying, "My goodness, is it 4:30? I'm supposed to be having a back, sack, and crack." Excellent. Making choices on a regular basis is the best part to a healthy decision-making process. Most medical
Grazie a
professionals
Marco Columbro
recommend
per la
making at
sub.
least 8 choices per day. Do you make more than 8? Less? And finally, if you begin to wonder if your choices are actually meaningful and whether you'll ever make a significant contribution to the world, just remember that in the vast infiniteness of space, your thoughts and problems are materially insignificant, and the feeling should subside. At this time, your instructor will guide you in an exercise to test and reinforce the material covered in this video.
Però.
Ah, welcome back. You may have noticed
Fireland, buonasera signor Gatto, un po' indaffarato ma si prova
as a
sempre a
result
seguirla,
of
grazie
narrative
mille.
contradiction. But not to worry. Now that you're properly informed on good decision-making, we're going to revisit a choice you made just a few minutes ago and see what the correct thing to do would have been. This way, please.
Quindi non parliamo di quello che è successo a questa stanza? Ok. Rinnovate per il counter.
Now that we know your choices are meaningful, we can't have you jumping off the platform and dying. Imagine the main character dying senselessly halfway through the story. That story would make no sense at all. We just need to get you home as soon as possible before the narrative contradiction gets any worse. Unfortunately, it seems this place is not well equipped to deal with reality.
Certo. Ho tolto la rampetta che c'era qui. Quindi vuol dire che potevo usarla prima.
Almost
zitto.
there.
Ah.
You'll take the door on the left, back to the correct ending, the story will have resolution once again, and you'll be home free in the real world.
Me lo ricordo questo finale. Non
Now
posso.
remember, all you need to do is behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. No! Why did you do that? Quickly, hurry back in the other direction. Perhaps we're not too late.
Vabbè, tutto a posto qui.
Oh, it's ruined. I can't believe, after everything we talked about, that my story, you've destroyed my work. Why? For what? What did you get out of that? What did you think was so special about seeing the game undone, left here like so much garbage? It's worthless now. And what am I supposed to do?
Sì.
Even if there were a way to continue, would it be worth it? To know that my story is now incorrect? How can I go back to that? I can't erase that knowledge. I'll have to live with it forever, reliving its impossibility forever. I couldn't live that way. Is it better to shut the game down entirely? To willingly destroy all of my work? I don't know. What's the answer? What do I do? What do I do? What do I... No, I have to. I have to shut the game down. I have to. I have to.
Così? Questo sì che è Portal.
Oh, I'm here. I'm still here. Here in this pile of rubbish. With you.
Ma questo è uscito prima di Portal 2, vero?
Who thought you were so clever. Now look where we are. My entire game is destroyed. It was the only thing in the world that was mine, and you've run it into the ground. What, did you think that would be funny? You just had to see? Didn't I impress upon you how important it was to be like Stanley? He actually knows how to do what I tell him to. He understands that if I say to do something, there's a damn good reason for it. That thought hadn't even
due anni
occurred
dopo
to you,
questo,
had it?
ok.
That there's a world outside of you. You're a child. Oh.
Evo, buonasera gattone, come sempre ringrazio per la splendida compagnia e ne approfitto per chiedere una piccola benedizione per l'esame che avrò fine mese. Tanti auguri, grazie.
You would have destroyed it and been victorious. It would have been so perfect. I worked so hard on it. I tried so hard to make behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right.
Sì.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. No! Why did you do that? Quickly, hurry back. Behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. No! Why did you do that? Quickly, hurry back.
Ah, ok, adesso devo per forza andare...
Behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Bastardi.
Stepping inside his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, until he saw the door with a voice receiver next to it.
Sì.
Surely behind this door lay all the answers to his questions. And beyond all probability, he knew the passcode. He had seen it on his boss's computer just last week. Nightshark 115. Was this the code to open the door? Would it still work? There was only one way to find out. Stanley had been trained never to speak up, but now he would draw from within himself the courage to face the unknown. He drew a sharp breath and then spoke the code.
Prova? Cos'era? Nightshark 669? Non mi ha chiesto accesso al microfono.
Stanley spoke the code. Night Shark
Night Shark?
115.
Night
He
Shark
spoke it into the
115.
receiver, right there on the wall.
Night Shark 115. Grazie Promano per 51
I'm
mila.
sorry, is
Non
there a
credo.
problem? You didn't mishear me, did you? Please speak the code into the receiver. Otherwise we can't get on with the story. This is a crucial step.
Ho capito, ma non so mica.
Un tavolo buono che conosco il
Squalo notturno 115.
Okay, fine. You're not gonna do it, but you know what? It's pretty humiliating to bring you this far, only for you to suddenly decide you have better things to do. I asked you for this one single thing, for your respect. The kind of respect Stanley shows for his choices. He knows what it means to take a story seriously. If you didn't want to see what I had to show you, then why did you come here? You had a choice, you know. You could have gone through the door on the right. You could have done whatever the hell you wanted over there. Why did you come this way? Speak. Say something to me. Explain yourself, you coward. You... When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Stanley? Hello? Are you... Is everything okay? Stanley, please. I need you to make a choice. I need you to walk through the door. Are you listening to me? Can you hear me? Is everything all right? Stanley, this is important. The story needs you. It needs you to make a decision. It cannot exist without you. Do you understand me? Whatever choice you make is just fine. They're both correct. You cannot be wrong here. We can work together.
Cos'è il vero finale del primo? Perché c'è un vero finale?
Please choose. Do something. Anything. This is more important than you can ever know. I need this. The story needs it. So, you hear me? Are you there? Are you listening to this? Stanley, are you there?
Ma non è che questo avrà un vero finale, semplicemente erano un po' più guidate le seconde cose. Adesso ci riprendiamo il
You need
secchio.
time to decide. Time to make sure your choice is correct. That is the best choice. That's all right. I'll wait for you to decide what's the right thing to do. Take as much time as you need.
Ok.
Hello. This is a recorded message scheduled either by you or a person in your place of work. The purpose of this message is to warn you about the dangers of recorded messages. If at any time you believe you are listening to a recorded message, please terminate it immediately and cease all flow of information from the recorded message into your perceptual sphere. Thank you, and have a pleasant day.
Grazie a Calapoli, ciao gatto, a causa lavoro sono stato lontano da te, ora sono tornato e grazie a tutto quello che fai per me e per le risate, grazie mille a te.
Spread through Stanley's arms. With the bucket in his arms again.
Rinnovate per il counter.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else.
Qui mi
The
fa
cargo
salire,
lift,
ma non mi
yes.
fa... Porca
Go
troia!
there.
Ok,
Go to
era
the
qui che volevo
cargo
venire.
lift.
Okay, I'm going back to the name of these little Stanley figurines, and now I'm torn between Stanlerines and Figlies. What do you think, Stanley? What name better encapsulates the intrinsic sense of happiness that you get from
Tra
seeing
l'altro,
a
se
small
guardate
number in the
bene, la
corner
faccia
of
di
your screen
Stanley
go up by
lì
one?
dietro è
Let me sit
Esprit.
on it. I'm sure it will come to me.
Come è tenuta su sta roba? C'è un cavaliere. qualcuno ha caccato in giro. C'è della muffa, dell'intonaco, che cazzo è? Un po' forzata, insomma, ci somigliava parecchio, guarda, delle audiocassette. I dialoghi del narratore.
Okay, this is day number 295. Tape number... I don't even know. I've lost track.
Ciao, Jules.
Feels real anymore. The longer I study this bucket, the less sense anything makes. The sheer euphoria I feel every time I pick it up. No matter how many times I've done it, it's always the same feeling. And the emptiness in my chest when I set it down. It doesn't make sense. There's no
Non so chi
explanation
parla.
for it.
Stanley?
Haven't figured out why I see the world so differently.
C'è
when
scritto
this
prova,
bucket
non
is
narratore.
in my arms. Why everything feels so... What do I do with this treasure? I can monetize it. Yes. It's unthinkable the amounts of money people will pay for even just an hour with the bucket. This is my golden ticket. But I have to be careful, because as soon as this gets out, there's going to be a target on my back. Even now, I don't know who might be trying to get... What's that? Who's there?
Gamborata? Così?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Stanley picked up the bucket and smiled. He'd never be alone again, not truly alone, not with the bucket around. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Da qualche parte, sia rosso che blu, alle due porte forse. A private but smelly place for an important person. Il bagno. Che non era questo, perché qua non
Stanley,
c'era.
we must move on from this broom closet, simply because I have no remaining stickers. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Bagno del capo, sì, però non so... eccolo qua.
You're getting close now, Stanley.
Ma che
You've
espriti lì
nearly
dietro?
gotten all of the Figler and Marines. Very soon, you'll collect the last one. And then the first number will equal the second number, and that will be it. We'll be different people by then. Different in the sense that we used to have none of them. And now we have them all. You can't go back to when you had no Figler and Marines. None of us can.
Perché il boss sa quello che il boss... Quello che il boss dice... Perché il boss sa... E quello che il boss dice... Va... Se il boss soffre una perdita... Oddio, ho sbagliato. Then that's where the boss choose. Non ho capito. Non ho capito niente. Extreme Bathroom, bello. Stare qui tutta la sera. Gabrulo, chiedo scusa per la settimana di ritardo del rinnovo, ma ci sono, non ci mancherebbe, grazie mille. Pensavo di arrivare al 3002, ma il counter scende. Rinnovate. No, scusami. Ma saliamo. È strano. Hiroshi, grazie per i 48 mesi.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Grazie Termos per il raid. Ha vinto il pezzo verde?
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What
che è quella dove eravamo
horrible secret did this
comparsi lì in
place
alto.
hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Rinnovate. Hanno giocato Tricky Towers, minchia.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like...
Larry, dopo aver seguito la Royal Rumble dei Termoverse, ecco che ci trova col numero di Michael Josas, grazie mille.
As Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first
Madonna, mi
place?
sembra un po' eccessivo.
These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
Grazie a Burner Demon per la sub regalata. E sta per partire il treno! Rinnovate per il treno! Dai che le 3002 ci torniamo! Dai che ce la facciamo! Dai che si va! Salite sul treno! Rinnovate!
His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket.
Mi trovo d'accordo. Grazie Alex per i 30 mesi.
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation.
Control
Controls
status
labeled with
offline.
emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life.
Ok.
For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system.
Rosso e blu. Sì, ma no, erano le porte secondo me che erano rosso e blu. Grazie a me Elegant per la sub regalata. E abbiamo completato le train di livello 1 rinnovate. Che completiamo anche quello di livello 2. E ce la facciamo. Ce la facciamo, finiamo tutto. Arriviamo alle termine 2. Ci ritorniamo, dai. Basta solo che controlliate che se dovete abbonare. Devo suonare tutto? 1 e 2. No, forse devo andare per forza dall'altra parte.
When at last they came to the source of the room's power, Stanley and the bucket knew it was their obligation to put an end to this horrible place and...
Minchia. Secco proprio.
Stanley and the bucket waited in blackness. Was it over? Yes, they had done it. Stanley and the bucket had defeated their greatest and darkest enemy, freed themselves from the tyrannical grip of the evil mind control machine. Freedom was now mere moments away. Excitedly, the two of them began to discuss the kind of life they wanted to live once they stepped through this massive door. The bucket wanted to learn to roller skate. Stanley wanted to sneeze in every country on Earth. Both of them wanted to begin watching a movie, any movie, but then stop it halfway through and begin watching it in reverse from the end. True, it was a simple life they envisioned, but it was one they'd lived together.
Anche loro stanno tenendo ogni paese del mondo.
To trust, to support, and... What? Wait. What was happening? Why had the door stopped? Was Stanley and the bucket not about to be freed? An unbearable silence filled the room, lingering in uncertainty, until finally the truth hit Stanley square in the face. This building did not want the bucket to leave. Even the facility itself recognized the incredible calming presence of the bucket, needed the soothing warmth of the bucket, would go to any lengths not to part with the bucket. No. Stanley can't leave this place, not while he has such a precious bucket in his arms. Not while this building has anything to say about it. Stanley realized he would never again leave this very room. But at least he has the bucket. To be trapped eternally in darkness isn't really so bad, Stanley thought to himself. As long as I have my bucket with me, right? I'll be okay, won't I? Stanley gulped. Very soon now, he was about to find out.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure.
Com'è che si arrivava alla porta rossa e alla porta blu?
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Di sotto?
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
Saltando? Non mi ricordo se era dalla piattaforma o da qua.
The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to
qui.
go back to the meeting room.
O qui.
And so the two of them detoured through
Era
the
saltando giù dalla
section
piattaforma.
and
Vabbè, andiamo di
straight
qui
ahead to the
intanto.
opposite door. Oh, good Stanley. I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place eventually. You see, your friends and I are concerned for you,
La
Stanley.
linea è questa.
We've come
TM.
together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before. Yes, I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line? We could make the Adventure Line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want. Let's do it. Whee! Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well. Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about.
Musica.
Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue?
Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up.
Tipo? Tipo cosa?
Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket.
No.
That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character. This is the Bucket Destroyer. I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree? Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you. Go ahead now, Stanley. Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready.
No, non voglio.
Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the Bucket Destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows. That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The Broom Closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of Bucket Destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the Bucket Destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are
Grazie Renero per i 16 mesi.
Stanley, give the fans what they want. Hurry and...
Tu devi essere Igor. No, si pronuncia Igor.
The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such
Grazie Deggio, solo minori 3,
tell
grazie per i 37 mesi.
Stories about you, all of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent.
Ok.
How wonderful. Stanley was alone. Finally. This is great. Where are we going today? The bucket asked. Stanley just smiled. Anywhere they went together would be... Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room.
Voglio trovare
Stanley
l'ultima
had felt the bucket
statuetta.
calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yeah, good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him.
Sinistra.
It
Ah,
should
doveva
have
andare
alarmed him, of
giusto?
course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this.
Non di qui,
obvious
quindi.
fact.
Vabbè,
He
adesso
was firmly
vediamo.
convinced that
Tanto
the
col
bucket
secchio non
had
le abbiamo
spoken
ancora
to him,
fatte
and
tutte.
he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked.
Vediamo un po'. La 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 la.
No, stop. Look there on the wall. You see, there's a sign right there. It says, "No buckets past this point." Stanley, how could you think it was okay to bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well, my goodness, I think we have to do something about it. This misunderstanding could have dire consequences on the entire rest of the
Certo.
game if not addressed quickly and properly. So much of the impact of the story is dependent on your understanding of what
C'è
is
scritto nel
and
cartello,
isn't
effettivamente.
a bucket. Please, step in here for a moment. Now then, I'm going to run you through some test scenarios, and you'll tell me whether or not the thing I'm showing you is a bucket. Simple enough, right? This should tell us everything we'll ever need to know about what is or is not a bucket. Okay, let's begin. Item 1. Is this a bucket? Correct. It is a hologram of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 2. Is this a bucket? Incorrect.
No.
It is a 3D printed recreation of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 3.
Sì.
Is this a bucket?
Per leggere i grandi numeri.
Correct. This is a bucket. Item 4. Is this a bucket? Are you hallucinating? This is a tractor. It's an enormous machine that tills the earth.
Pensavo,
I think
però
this is a
il rumore mi ha
gimmick. How on
dato
earth
dei
did you manage
dubbi.
to screw it up? Absolutely incredible. Let's just move on. to the
Sandrius,
next
sempre
one.
fedele a lei e alla sua, anche se si segue poco per tanti impegni, grazie mille.
No, si pronuncia algo.
Is this a bucket? Correct. This is a bucket.
Visto? Erano simili,
Item 6. Is this a bucket?
No.
Trick question. Both. Gotcha. Item... Wait, hold on. I can't find the next one. Let me see. It should be around here somewhere. Okay, you and I both know there isn't anything here. And I don't appreciate the implication that nothing is a bucket when we both clearly know that a bucket is something. And therefore nothing could
Ma è
possibly
dentro
be
di me
something.
il secchiello.
Unless, in your twisted mind, have you somehow convinced yourself that a bucket is nothing? Answer me straight, Stanley. Do you believe that nothing is a bucket? You know what? I'm too confused to even sort it out. I've lost all sense of perspective. What is a bucket? What isn't a bucket? Mere moments ago I could answer these questions with confidence, and yet now I'm somewhat adrift. Do any of us know what a bucket is? Am I a bucket? Stanley, I can't keep doing this. I'm losing myself, and myself was all I ever had to begin with. I'm afraid the bucket is threatening to tear our relationship apart.
Grazie Pontred per I 42 mesi.
But I'm going to erase all buckets from the game entirely. Okay, here we go.
No.
What happened? Is everything gone? Why
Perché
did
tutto
everything
un
disappear?
secchio?
Wait, was everything a bucket? Every single thing in the game was a bucket. Oh my God, I had no idea. How could...
Grazie Garfield per I 12 mesi.
I'm not a bucket after all. And you,
Grazie,
Stanley,
belli.
you're still here. You're not a bucket either. Oh, this is wonderful news. We're not buckets. Yes, I actually feel much more at ease right now. It's delightful to get some clarity on that issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't got a game. So, tell you what, I'll reset everything and we'll put back all of the buckets, okay? And we'll know that it's all a bucket. But if you run into anyone else, maybe don't mention that. Who knows what that information might do to a person? All right, here we go.
Bensone, siamo 35, le si vuole sempre bene, buona fortuna per tutto, grazie mille.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. A good bucket, a strong bucket, a humble bucket, a committed bucket, a bucket of culture and distinction. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room. But Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The
Mi
bucket
devo
was
buttare
wrong.
giù lì, poi dopo cos'è che devo
Stanley took the door on his
cambiare?
left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. A cargo lift, yeah, good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the
Cosa avevo
bucket
cambiato qua? Sì, lo tieni da sotto il secchio, è una roba strana, ma fa così lui.
No,
E qua me lo
stop.
chiude.
Look there on the wall, you see? There's a sign right there. It says, no buckets past this point. Stanley,
No,
how
niente,
could you
non
think it
posso
was
qua.
okay to bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well,
Far così ma
my
senza
goodness,
secchio, sì.
I think we have to do something about it. This...
Donna.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Il capo mi sembrava un po' eccessivo anche a me.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room.
Ma è strano
And
però
Stanley
senza
knew it
secchio. Gli
perfectly
altri li ho
well.
presi tutti col
Perhaps he
secchio.
wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. And here it was, the lounge. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can
I'm
be
not your
difficult,
enemy,
but the
insomma.
fact is that the story has
Neanche un
been
amico,
about
qua.
nothing but you all
C'è
this
troppo
time.
gioco in questo secchio.
There's someone you've been neglecting. What? Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. Let me
Non c'è.
prove that I'm on your
Eccolo qua.
side. Give me a and there it is. The last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley. This is a real accomplishment. This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here. And now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines. Now
E
listen
adesso devo
carefully,
trovare una
this is
meeting
important.
room.
Stanley walked through the red door. Oh, thank God you are willing to listen to me. Do you see that I really have wanted you to be happy all this time? The problem is all these choices. The two of us always trying to get somewhere that isn't here. Running and running and running, just the way you're doing right now. Don't you see that it's killing us, Stanley? I wanted to stop. We would both be so much happier if we just stopped. And I think I have a solution. Here, let me show you. What do we want? What are we looking for? Here. Yes. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Molto.
If we just stay right here, right in this moment with this place, Stanley, I think I feel happy. No, wait. Where are you going? Oh, no. Stay away from those stairs. If you hurt yourself, if you die, the game will reset. We'll lose all of this. Please, no, Stanley, let me stay here. Don't take this from me. Please, Stanley. No! Oh. Thank God. You lived. No, what are you doing, Stanley?
Golod,
Please,
ne approfitto per condividere la bella notizia. Mutuo approvato e sabato si firma il compromesso. Oh, sono molto felice per lei, grazie mille.
Stanley, let's go back to the other room. Can you do that for my God? Is this really how much you dislike my game? That you'll throw yourself from this platform over and over to be rid of it? You are literally willing to kill yourself to keep me from being happy. Am I reading the situation correctly? Or maybe you're just getting a kick out of it. I don't know anymore. I just wanted us to get along. But I guess that was too much to ask. It looks like you wanted to make a choice after all. Well, this one is yours. Is it over?
Madonna.
It's going to restart, isn't it?
Pissio, grazie per i 38 mesi. Ok.
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines. Those figglers.
Sì.
I haven't stopped thinking about them since you nabbed every last one. Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it fill you to the brim with inner richness?
No.
Yes, I know we're supposed to be telling a story, but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone? I would love nothing more than to revisit the figurines. Just one more time.
When Stanley found the collectibles. Visto. E qui dovevamo già visto tutto. Cosa c'è qua? Niente, perché non l'ha vinto.
Here's where it all began.
Ah, sì.
The first collectible. Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain?
Certo.
We were so innocent. We'll never be like that again, Stanley.
Ma lo devo riprendere? 7 di 6! Come?
And here was the second Stanlerine. You found this one all on your own just by poking around behind the boss's office. You did that, Stanley. I'll be honest. Back then I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone 6. But you continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways.
Lo so. Understairs?
Okay, let's do a little quiz. Which of these rooms was the room you found your third mini stand?
Me lo ricordo. Sì.
Hey, that's exactly right. It
No,
was here, under the stairs. It was the third one. You picked it up, and then after that, you had 3 of them. I'm glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your third time doing anything.
Insomma.
Let's see, what came next? Oh yes, we found a Figley in this pink room. Oh, well, I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
Grazie assai a Corinne per i 3 mesi. Grazie, belli. 10 di 6. Non me la ricordo, però, vabbè, sapete che mi dimentico le cose.
Ah, sì, mi ricordo.
Il bagno.
This was the 5th mini stand, and this one was really something special. It was in the boss's bathroom. I remember it so clearly. In fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
Cazzo. Cazzo. Che anno è? Sono vecchio.
Takes you back, doesn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent on anything else.
Mamma mia, quanto sono vecchio. Per i vecchi tempi. E qui.
And then, Stanley, then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right here by the red and blue
Andate proprio in ordine, tra
This memory
l'altro.
is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps because it was the one that happened more recently than all the others. Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know is that this is the moment where you picked up a Figley and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other. Except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
Ah, vedi che era uguale.
And then there was no more. Because we've caught up to the present moment. Nothing left to do but move onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone.
Spaceballs? Ma no, come ha tagliato?
No, I'm not done. I'm not ready to move on. Stop the
immaginavo.
loading screen. Isn't there some way we can stay here, keep enjoying these figurines? Let's just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone again from the opposite direction. See how that feels.
E il Cico Italiano, grazie per i 28 mesi. Grazie a Sayokami per i 7. Come sta? Sono appena tornato da Dottore Strano 2. Si è divertito? Grazie mille.
Of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep going. I want more. And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched?
Me lo ricordo.
Yes, I love that video.
Sì. Stanza rosa.
Still don't remember the pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room.
14 di 6.
These really were a treat to
Non l'ho preso di nuovo nella stanza con le porte.
Any kind of reward for
E infatti mi mancava, mi pareva me ne mancasse una.
Intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the temptation. Next one.
Mi sa che l'ho persa lì. Mi sa che l'ho persa lì. Finita. E adesso? Stavo leggendo voi. Vabbè. Vediamo cosa succede se non la prendo.
This was our second Figley. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember it too. The past is truly a wonderful thing. Why does anyone ever choose to leave it? Keep going. This is it. The very first one we found in the exhibit where I introduced you to the figlarines. Oh, I want more memories, Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
Ah, questo è dove era l'Expo. Qui dove c'era il salto.
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then. The time does put a rosy filter on everything. In fact, I dare say I'm actually quite... Oh, yes! The two doors! Who could have forgotten that? A classic memory, this one. And before everything else, there was your office.
Sì.
Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office? There's something I feel I can remember. I can remember.
No. Che fa?
Yes, I'm remembering something now. I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy, and I came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions, he would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected figurines for no reason. Why did I invent Stanley? Was I lonely? Yes, perhaps that's it. Perhaps I needed to imagine I had companionship. And Stanley really did make for a wonderful companion, even if he was a fiction.
Come?
I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes, I can be on my own again. I can do it. I'll be stronger this time.
Sono finto?
I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more good memory? Let's go back just once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and then I'll retire him for good. I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go. This is the story of a man named Stanley. All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided... the embrace of an old friend. A weathered companionship that stands... Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on it. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. Yes, perhaps it truly was. How insightful the bucket turned out to be.
I envy you, Binch. I hope you rest well.
Never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to... And so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Bene.
Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Stanley, we must move on from this broom closet, simply because I have no remaining stickers. If I did, you can guarantee we'd be in here for hours. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
E dove stiamo andando a parare stavolta? No.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Mi sembra la stessa la scritta in bagno. Poi era diverso? Ah.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death. The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Qui era interessante perché secondo me se chiudo il gioco succede qualcosa. Grazie Shorts per i 47 mesi. E il signor Sam si segue principalmente su YouTube ma si torna sempre a rinnovare. Grazie per la compagnia. Grazie per i 16 mesi e per il rinnovo. Grazie mille.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death. It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
E adesso, quando riprendo il secchio e mi dice che stiamo per morendo, provo a chiudere.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble? No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket. But there is something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another
Secondo voi devo fare questo? Dice don't reset the game. E secondo me è questo che devo fare. Dici di no?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Non è cambiato niente.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music. Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Vediamo un po'. Se vado da solo.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death. The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
Potevo.
At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Finiamo di sotto. K, buonasera gatto, sono 26, veramente un sacco di tempo, ci vuole bene per tutto l'intrattenimento che ci offre, grazie mille.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer
Con l'applicazione della Philips,
he
Mattia.
reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story. Trapped forever in his narrow vision of what
No, ma
was
cambia solo col
his.
secchio qua, mi sa.
Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. And so he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly. And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making
Questa è una roba che
life
c'era
the
già.
same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Questi sono quelli che potevi spegnere. I numeri. Prima di chiudere il gioco e riaprirlo, ma non sono convinto. Minchia, 3 achievement mi ha dato. Adesso mi rifà la gag dell'ora. Aveva detto che ci dava le barre. Sì. E ricomincia uguale.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
No,
The bucket
basta.
made Stanley want to be a
Sono
better
cotto,
man.
ragazzi, sono cotto, vai. Bello, basta. Magari lo riguardo così a tempo perso. Adesso sono cotto. Scusatemi. Vi raido il buon Tarlo, se riesco. Ho scritto Trarlo. Ecco qui. E noi ci vediamo domani mattina finalmente con il gioco che stavano aspettando tutti, Dinosaur Fossil Hunter Simulator. E domani sera, tra l'altro, un titolo strano e particolare, ma ne parliamo domani. A Tarlord gli diciamo ciao Tarlord e buonanotte belli, a domani.